Hello, everyone, regardless of what time zone you're watching this in. My name is Lance, and I'm with Wartilyo, and I am joined once again by a very special guest, Stuart McCowan of the captain of Team Australia 2024. Hi, Stuart.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing all right. And if you guys have watched the 6 rounds that were posted over the course of several weeks, you know the result already. And Team Australia came out on top against us and showed that having a lot more experience in the game and the team game per se, like that really helps out a lot. And I can't wait to do this post exhibition match analysis. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a quick recap on what happened, and then we're gonna talk about our takes. We're gonna show our scoring matrix. Then we'll go over Team Australia's pairings matrix rather to be able to show off the kind of mental calculus that goes into how we pair people up. So as we get started on this, like Stuart, when we found out, that we were using the new battle scroll or that we were using armies of renown, did it really shift a lot of gears in your list building?
Yeah, for sure. I think we had a lot of these armies that got really kind of mega nerfed by the battle scroll.
Yeah,
So, Slanesh went up by a lot again.
yeah,
And we kind of felt like maybe it was time to retire the Slanesh for a little bit. We might end up back on it after this, but we kind of went off the Slanesh. What else? Oh, Skaven, the list massively changed because
yeah,
the bell and the furnace suddenly became good overnight, which was not
yeah.
something I was expecting.
When you don't need
Um,
rats to push them, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
And yeah, just the other big thing, of course, aside from the battle scroll, was the Army of Renown stuff that came out on the same weekend. So there were some massive changes that definitely made us, change a lot of the lists. Yeah.
yeah. On our end, not as much. Although I know Dennis really wanted to try King Broad Stomp, and we saw how that turned out. It's super fun. That funny enough, because everyone's like weirdly busy. The one guy who got to test the list out against a corn matchup, sorry, against my corn army. Sorry, Dennis was able to test his list out against my corn armies to kind of practice a bit. Although what I used was very different from what Jordy brought out. So yeah, being able to chuck Tareen across the map is pretty crazy. Doing like he dealt like 14 wounds to a bloodthirster just by tossing it was nuts. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about that a bit more later when we talk about the specific matchups and the pairings matrix, I guess. So yeah, it was very exciting. The matchups went down to these three different like rows. Under limited resources, we had Nathan's KO against Seraphon, and Liam switched out of Slanesh, as Stuart mentioned, and went up against Patrick's Ogres. After that, we have Every Step is Forward. We got Peter's Maggotkin against Zami's Disciples of Zinch. Matt went up against me with his Sons of Behemoth against my Iron Jaws, and Every Step is Forward. Jordan Reese or Jordy went up against Dennis with Blades of Corn against Sons of Behemoth, and Stuart with his Skaven went up against Nika's Gloomspite Gitz in Geomantic Pulse for the last two pairings. And overall, going into this, let's reveal how we thought of it. Like, we actually went into this feeling really good about the pairings because we initially thought that we had like 4 green matchups because obviously we looked at everything based on a battle plan and a and a pairings perspective. But based on the actual results that you see below here, it's kind of obvious that we misjudged some of them. If you look at the first table though, like Kharadron Overlords is red all around. I don't know, man. Like, what do you think, Stuart? Like when you were, I know we're gonna see this later on, but when you guys had KO in your corner, did you feel that KO was a good matchup against pretty much everyone? Because the shoot twice is nuts.
So what I'd say about the KO with the shoot twice. So the new rule is that after they shoot or fight, so any
Yeah,
unit in their army can on a 4-up do it again at minus on the hit. So the thing about that is it can kind of be a little bit of a get out of jail free card if you roll a bunch of 4-ups, right? Like if you're in kind of a bad matchup and you just get the right turn and you roll a bunch of 4-ups, and then you get the double turn and you roll a bunch of 4-ups again, it can actually win you a game in a matchup that you really shouldn't win. And so that means that the army kind of can play against everything decently. But the thing with this army is just in the matchups is like, how reliably can it do well? So, okay, not everything. I would say that it doesn't really have that many like red matchups, like bad matchups, but it doesn't have so many green matchups because there's still like a degree of random chance with it, if it makes sense. Yeah.
No, that it does. But I agree. I think that it being super random like that, ranging from being a bog standard KO army with less ironclads to having 10 shooting phases is, I think it's a competitive player's worst nightmare, I think. I feel.
Yeah.
And so when you guys think of green, yellow, and red matchups, do you like, is it based on a specific like point range difference that you need to get to? So for example, if it's a green matchup, that means we win by 10 points or something like that. Or is it more
Yeah.
of a
So for
sentiment?
me,
Yeah.
I usually consider from 7 to 13 points as a yellow, something that
Okay.
range, and then
Yeah.
lower than 7 points out of 20 is a red, and then above 13 points is a green. I kind of think about it that way.
Okay. Actually, we have the same frame of mind here based on the chart that we had. So yeah, we had a. So just for transparency, me and my friends, like me, Nico, Zami, Dennis, Joe, and Patrick, we didn't go into this as much with as much prep as a team. We all studied our own armies, and we didn't talk about filling in specific roles per se. So if you guys see, like, our chart is all over the place. It's not very evenly spread out. There's clearly like 3 armies that are very red. I think that as a team, we didn't have a shooting component. We didn't have like a KO or an IDK, which I think is very important. I'm gonna leave you to discuss later what you think Skaven is, because it seems like a lot of things somehow. Like when we first looked at your list, I think we didn't properly assess what it was about, and that's why we thought that Gits had a green matchup into it, because I think we're just used to a very different type of Skaven back here at home. And it's not that the Skaven back at home isn't bad. It's just that we're used to it being played a very specific kind of way. So, how many players do you think there are in Australia? I guess, if you don't mind, like an estimate, like 100 plus, 200 plus, like active competitive players.
I'd probably say actively attending tournaments it's probably about 200. Yeah.
Okay, because I think at most we have like 30 rotating cast, and probably much less than that. So whenever we have a player play a certain army, that player's army. Sorry, that player is the representative of that army. So us getting to play with you guys kind of shows us a broad range of what else we could bump into. So, yeah, um, there were a lot of reds, especially on the IDK. When we saw Liam's list, we were all really scared of it because we didn't know what to expect. We thought that only blitzing them would be good. Pat, the way we did this too was because we didn't really talk about this as a team. I asked each individual player to mark green, red, or yellow based on their own confidence level playing against a certain matchup. And I didn't vet that. I just went with our own gut instinct because we didn't really have experience playing as a team. I did the same thing for battle plans. Each person vetted their own confidence level, which is why, despite pairing against you twice, I put Joss Seraphon under limited resources because that was his green, and I wanted to make sure he was there. So at the end of the day, we looked at several of these matchups and realized that we didn't pair them as well as we could have. Like my initial green for Sons of Behemoth was a yellow, and based on your analysis of KO earlier, do you think a swingy matchup should be a yellow or a red rather than a green?
Yeah, a yellow, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it makes destruction armies besides Git really hard to pair because they tend to be really swingy.
Mm.
Yeah. So the Gits matchup, we got that completely wrong. It went from green to 0 to 20 against you. And Zami was pretty confident going to Maggotkin. I think that though the result was a red, he felt that the reason it went that way was because he played wrong and could have played a bit better. But hearing your side of the story later would be nice. We had an accurate assessment in Dennis bringing King Broad Stomp against Khorne. When we played a practice round of that, it was pretty disastrous because I think Khorne, with a lot of its chaff units, got to pin Sons of Behemoth down on one side in Geomantic Pulse with Murderlust. So this was a pleasant surprise on our end that he kind of learned the tricks and stayed away like more than 9 inches away for Murderlust to be a little less dangerous, I think. And Seraphon, when we found out that we were sending Joe against Nathan, I kind of apologized to him after because I didn't have any idea what to do. You very smartly put Khorne and KO against Seraphon. Out of curiosity, would you have preferred that I pick Khorne or KO to go against Seraphon, just based on your own like gut or sense check, or was it like either one is a losing game?
So I think this is actually this is one of the interesting points from the pairing. So just as a broader point, like looking at your matrices, you kind of have an awkward problem, which is that every army has 2 reds, right? That's an awkward problem to deal with because it means that you can't actually really defend with anything safely, right? If you defend with Iron Jaws, for instance, I could attack with, Maggot King of Nurgle and Khorne, and you're guaranteed to get a red. So given that that's the case, you kind of got like 2 ways of getting out of it. And the first one is to try to predict what I'm going to defend with, right?
Right.
So if I'm going to defend with like, I think in this case, I defended with Ideneth.
Yeah.
If you can like put one of the armies that has a red into Ideneth on limited resources as well, you can kind of dodge Ideneth, right? Because I can't attack with my defender as well. So that's one way around it. But the other way around it, I think, is trying to get rid of a red in a way that you're going to score a lot of points at the start, right? And to get rid of a red for the other members of your team. So so you can kind of see on the matrix that KO is pretty bad for everybody. So getting rid of that is good for sure, right? But also getting rid of Khorne is quite good because like the Tzeentch and the Iron Jaws have a bad matchup there. And what I would say is, I think what would have made Khorne maybe a better choice is that limited resources is a bad battle plan for Khorne, and it's a good battle plan for Seraphon. So because of that, probably Seraphon will score a bunch of points on that battle plan. Whereas KO, that's probably KO's best battle plan. So although you're taking a red for the team, it's probably the case that Seraphon will give up a lot of points because it's a good battle plan for KO. So I think that's where the battle plan dimension kind of enters in because probably even though it's a red, I'd probably say it's more like a yellow versus Khorne on that battle plan of Seraphon versus Khorne, just because Khorne is so weak at that battle plan. Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. That's really interesting. I didn't think about like whether an opponent's army is good or bad at the battle plan. So that's a good dimension to approach. So so I guess there are times when it's better to bust the red matchup out, like for KO, and there are times when it's good to take the Khorne. Then okay, that's interesting. So when you designed like the 3 missions to put in every pack, sorry, in every round of Release the Beast. In this case, we cut a round from there to get limited resources. Every step is forward and Geomantic Pulse. Was it very intentional for you that the really swingy high point mission was the last one of the 3, or was it all random?
I think generally what I tried to do is avoid a situation where the really swingy high point mission is on the second set of maps.
Oh, why is that?
So the reason for that is I think basically, in my opinion, the strongest possible place an army can be in the pairings is defending on map 2. Because at that point, your opponent's already lost 2 armies, and you're on the battle plan that you want to be on. So the probability that you get a good matchup is actually super high. So I tend to avoid putting the high scoring missions on that map if I can, just because it can kind of swing the battle plan a little bit. For context, at Worlds, I believe we had Lurkers Below as the second mission on 2 of the rounds.
Yeah.
And what that meant is that almost every round, both teams will get a 20-0 on Lurkers Below, because at that point, like, you probably removed one of the counters to that army. And on Lurkers Below, it was basically this old mission where, just for the people who are watching, not sure, like, this old mission where
please.
if you win you can like insta win on turn 3, and if you do in that pack, it was an automatic 20 points. So that, for me, I saw that, I was like, I need to make sure at my tournaments that this doesn't happen. So I always try to make sure that map 2 like is kind of a mission that doesn't necessarily advantage one army like super high over others if I can. So like we had every step is forward here, and this is kind of like not super bad for any army.
Yeah.
Like, I think you've got Gargants as a red here, because of the retreat thing. But Gargants can still play this mission.
Right.
It's just the thing that where you can't counter objectives as you retreat is a bit awkward. But yeah, it's kind of a spread mission, but it's also not, because there's only 3 objectives, right? And it's you can deploy in the corner because it's got a big deployment, but you can also deploy close if you're a combat army. So there's lots of kind of like flex in this mission. So I kind of like this one in the middle. And yeah, I think after playing this and upon reflection, I don't know if in a pack I would put limited resources as the first mission. I'm not so sure about that. It feels a little like,
yeah.
So I think the issue with it is it can make the defender a little bit safe because it's quite a low scoring mission, and so it means that even in a red matchup, you're probably still going to score a lot of points. And I think a mission like Nexus Collapse would be the same. And so that maybe could make the first defender a bit safer than it should be. I don't know, but that's okay. You can have like some kind of variance in the pack like that. But
no,
yeah, that's just a thought I had.
No, that's fair, and I super love the analysis for that. Like, I think that there are a lot of times people think that tournaments, when the people release packs, it's all just random. But I'd like to think that, especially if you've been running a tournament series for a long time, you tend to think about what's a good first mission, what's a good second or third mission. And for team events especially, I feel that it is a lot more complex, right? Because like you said, the first mission being a low scoring one would be really good for the defender. Would you then, I guess in hindsight, with the mentality that you have, switch Geomantic Pulse and limited resources for this round?
I probably would actually switch. I might switch limited resources and every step is forward, maybe.
Okay, that's very interesting. Just because it's a low scoring mission, and it is the defender in round 2. Sorry, in the middle mission is the strongest position, right? As you said.
Yeah. So, although there are armies that are super strong and limited resources, at least there's kind of a cap to how many points they can score because of the, in that mission, you kind of run at objectives to score on the last turn. So, yeah.
No, that's fair. No, okay, that's really interesting, and I can't wait to go to your matrix. But to wrap up our matrix, Patrick, who is recording this video, he gave me all reds and yellows, which makes it harder for me to pair him aggressively or put him as a Actually, no, he is definitely an attacker if he gives me all reds and yellows. And this is where I'd like to ask your take. If your players give you all reds and yellows, let's say, have you ever disagreed with your players on their assessment of a matchup? And how do you deal with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, we'll get to it when we get to my matrix, but actually, I did the whole matrix this time, just because it was a bit last minute. But yeah. So
Okay.
I would say that one of the main challenges as a captain is people have a very different definition of what a green, yellow, and a red is.
Right.
So maybe Patrick's definition of what a yellow is like, something that could swing either way and become like, okay, this could be an 18-2 or a 2-18, depending on like turn 2 or 3 prior, because it's, it's an ogre destruction army, right? And so that is kind of a yellow, but like it could be a green, like it could become like a massive green if he's on the right mission and he happens to be lower drop and then he gets like the priority roll or something, right? So it is a little bit conditional. But yeah, these destruction armies are quite difficult to pair with. What I would say is looking at this, maybe you could have a role as a defender because okay, it doesn't have like the greatest matchups, but at least maybe you can like pick one of these yellows. Like for example, you could pick like the Ideneth or something, which is what happened in the end when you attacked. But you could pick one of the Ideneth, and that could remove a red for the rest of your team. And although it's a yellow, it could swing to like 18 too, and then that could possibly win you the whole round, right? So that's the advantage of a destruction army is like the variance, because an army like Lumineth or Seraphon, it doesn't have like that many ways of just completely popping off and tabling your opponent, and so it can be kind of predictable in the pairings, but that's both a blessing and a curse. So it's difficult to pair with destruction armies, but they still have like their role for sure.
So generally, let's say you got your ogres, your suns, and your iron jaws, which our team had 4 destruction players. Do you given that swinginess, like let's say your team had that kind of swinginess, do you usually put them up as defenders or attackers? I'm just curious. Like, yeah, because of the swinginess, or is it based, I guess, on your opponent's thing? Okay.
I probably would defend with one of them on the first map. Yeah. Just because I think when you get to the second map, you probably want to defend with something on the second map that has a bit of predictability to it. So, because you probably get a green on the second map, like that happens a lot. Like I was saying before, you have 2 armies removed, and then you get to pick one from the 4. One out of 2 given to you from the remaining 4 armies.
Right.
So you probably get a good matchup. And so you kind of want something that's going to reliably deliver the points on the second one, because defending with something on the second map is a bit of like resources investment. If you're playing an 8-person team, it'd be like the third map. But for me, that's kind of like the prize spot. So I'm kind of always trying to put like a player with an army there that I know is going to like do well if they get a good matchup. So destruction armies, I think are better kind of used as the way I describe it is like they're kind of like a low cost investment to take out like a high value piece. Like your opponent has like this kind of OP army, and you just have a bunch of like fat lads riding mammoths. And if stuff goes right, they can win the game, and they can kind of rob a game away from your opponent. And sometimes it won't work, but it can be a way of dealing with a difficult to deal with army for sure.
Okay, that's fair. So now we're going to your matrix, because I think we're basically talking about your philosophy already. And I noticed something very different from our matrix, where I don't see a straight red bar on one side of the matrix. Did you guys set aside a night to talk about what lists and what roles you guys would do when you guys did the plan for the exhibition game?
So we actually didn't have a night to talk about this. Sometimes I don't actually use a matrix, but I think it's better to. That's just me being lazy, to be honest. But I made this one on my own. But so I'd say probably as a captain, probably like this is probably the best thing I bring as captain is I think my strength as a player is kind of like this this broad kind of game knowledge thing. So I do feel like decently confident in filling this thing out by myself. There are definitely a few mistakes here, like which I'll talk about a bit later. But I think I'm kind of confident in my ability to do this on my own. I do ask I do ask for specific matchups last time, but as I was saying before, the challenge is if you get your team to fill out the pairing sheet, you can kind of end up in a situation where you have to look at like the internal variance of that player's matchups, rather than like how they compare to other ones, if that makes sense. So like, talking about Patrick's matchups before, like you have to kind of consider, okay, well, he's got a yellow here and a red here. So, and then you think about what a yellow and red means for him compared to another person, right? And whereas if I make the whole matrix myself, I know that the green means the green in all the same spots, right? Rather than having to kind of go through, analyzing someone's personality and that. So that's the advantage of doing it by yourself. But of course, if you make some like mistakes about what an army does. So I think for us, just to kind of get into it, the biggest mistake was maybe slightly overestimating the Ideneth. This is this is a new army, the shark spam, and
Yeah,
of course, we did some math hammer and it looked great, but it's still got that thing with Ideneth where okay, it's D3 damage and the right prior rolls need to go your way and stuff like that, so it's a bit swingy. So I think a lot of these fours here, so Iron Jaws, Ogres, and Zinch probably should be 3s or 2s, just because they're a little bit swingy. I'm kind of
right.
comfortable with the other ones. I think Gargants is quite good for Ideneth, but
Yeah.
yeah, because you just remove one a turn. But yeah, the Ogres, Iron Jaws, and Zinch probably should be quite a bit lower than that.
I'm surprised that Zinch was a 4 for IDK. But the thing with the Ogre matchup does, I remember talking to Patrick and he said, oh, by the end of like turn 1 or start of turn 2 or something, he only had 2 Frost Lords left and he was able to chip a win out from there. So it means that these guys have so much bite. It swung so high and then he even reversed the tides, I think. So I'm at this point, for full disclosure, I haven't watched the videos of the other matches yet because they're still being uploaded to YouTube, but we are doing a post analysis. So I really still want to watch how that turned out, because this list actually, the Ideneth list, when everyone saw it, more than the KO list, it felt obviously threatening compared to all the other stuff. So I can see why you guys would have thought it was all 4s and 5s. But yeah, so it would do. So you think it does poorly against Gits because of recursion, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it struggles to kill like it struggles to kill like a lot of bodies. Yeah, I would say against ogres, the problem is it can kill like the whole army except the Frost Lords super easily. But the Frost Lords are just so hard for it to deal with because they won't kill one in a turn usually.
Yeah.
Once a few of them have died, and that means that they can heal because they have a few ways to heal, right? And also like save stacking is a problem because they got a 3-up save, and you can do like Mystic Shield, Finest Hour, all that defense. And yeah, you can have multiple ways to get like a 2-up save against the shooting. So yeah, the Frost Lords are a problem for sure.
Right. So okay, I'm looking at this list over here, and another one that I'm actually skeptical about was you're putting KO as a. Okay, no, because you put KO as a 3 against Seraphon because KO is swingy, not because you think it's a bad matchup. Because the moment we realized that KO had a spell ward and it was going into Starborn, we pretty much wrote the match off a bit. It was kind of
Yeah.
bad.
So I actually forgot that it had that until after the pairing. So
Oh,
that's why
okay.
this is a 3. I would
Yeah.
put it as a 5 now.
Yeah.
I think especially with Gotrek being super killable, right? With
Yeah.
30 Thunderers, like he's kind of immediately dead.
Yep.
Which is what happened in the game as well. Yeah, I think that's a really good matchup for the Caradron. But yeah, it's a 3 because I literally forgot that it had a spell ignore. So I was worried. I was worried they kill Gotrek and then the double turn could happen back and like all the Thunderers could die to magic.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, the 4-up spell ignores the thing.
it was really brutal. I was watching it, and every time Nathan would roll like a 4-up, I was like, "Oh my god, it's already bad. Please, it's already dead. Stop." No, but yeah, we this was really painful for Joe, I think, because he was the first one to get paired, so he immediately knew he was fighting KO with a spell ignore, and then it was the last match to fight. So chronologically, right, it was the last game to be played. So it was like, okay, Stuart just 20-0'd Nico, and you guys, if we win, if you 20-0 the red matchup, so good luck. So it was like, I don't know how teams works in Worlds. Like in Worlds, everyone plays at the same time, right? There's no like batching of games.
Actually, it's so there is actually some strategy involved in picking armies that the result of the game is clear early on, because it means that the coach can like get the result of the game and then go around and tell other players, okay, you need to like get as many points because we're going to lose the round if you don't 20-0, right?
Right.
So like I know last year at Worlds, France you actually used Iron Jaws for this purpose, and the Iron Jaws player would just full send and just it would turn to priority, would just decide the game every game. And that was the whole strategy, is like, okay, we know what the result is, and then the coach can tell the rest of the players what to do in the rest of the round. So, and that's actually another use of distraction armies, is because they're quite fast, right? They don't have too many mechanics. You can just get a result super early, and it can help your team decide how risky they need to play, how many points they need to score, stuff like that.
That's actually really fascinating. So, okay, correct me if I'm wrong though, but for Worlds, you win the entire event based on the overall score of your team. So why would you ever advise a teammate not to go for a 20-0, right? Like, why would a destruction player's result make you change that mentality? Since you're competing with over the course of you're competing with the scores of everyone over 5 rounds, or sorry, 8. Was it 8 games in Worlds?
6 rounds, yeah.
Sorry,
6 rounds.
6. Okay, but yeah, what? Let's say your Iron Jaws player is 20-0'd. Why would you ever tell your teammates to just slow it down a bit? Because you're trying to beat everyone else's score, not just the opponent's score, right?
Yeah, so you're right in the sense that at Worlds it's based on your overall points rather than actually beating the team you're playing against, and there is maybe a logical element for trying to get like a close win. But I'd say that, so let's say that the Iron Jaws player loses.
Sure.
It's and they lose like 20-0. It is
Okay.
actually good for your team to take a risk and try to get as many points as possible in that situation, because over the course of the event, you still need to score a lot of points, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of points you can get is capped out. So it was, I believe, you capped at 120 at
Yeah.
Worlds. So if you lost 0-20, then you try to get as many points for the rest of your players as you can. And then on the opposite side of things, if the Iron Jaw player did win, then there wouldn't be that much of a reason to try to get 20-0s with the rest of your players, because you would reach that cap.
I see.
Whereas if you took a massive risk and then gave up a 0-20 or something, you might fall below the cap and end up in a situation where you don't score as many points. So the cap is the main thing that makes you kind of play that way. Otherwise, you're right, you would just try to get 20-0 with everyone all the time.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, because based on what I know about my friends who I played this with, telling them that we're ahead, it does different things to different people, right? Like, it's poison for some, but it's a boost for other people. It rallies them, or if it's like, oh man, I better not screw this up. Like, it does different things. The people who were you on your team for the exhibition game? Have you had the pleasure of being a teammate of theirs before, or is this your first time working with all these gentlemen?
I think a few of them I've been on the team before. So I mean, Orkman, we actually did not this Worlds, but the previous Worlds together. So he was on the Australian team in 2022.
Okay.
But actually, we haven't. So last year we had a coach. Well, this year, so 2023 squad, we had a coach, but we didn't have a coach that year. So, yeah, our captain played an army that was like decently fast, so he tried to get around, but it was awkward to kind of like know the results of other players. Yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't really had that experience yet.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah. So okay, I want to go over some of these pairing differentials first, and I want to talk about the armies of renown a bit before we go on to King Broadstomp, because I'm sure we have a lot of words about that. I want to talk about Gitz and Skaven. I know now that it was very wrong of us to put Skaven as green for Gitz. It was wrong of us to assess that. But from your perspective, as the guy who wrote the Skaven list and put Gitz as 5, like the matchup you wanna pick, why would you say that Skaven goes well into Gitz? And I want to add an addendum to this. Okay, I remember that night when we were pairing up, Sons of Behemoth had to choose between Iron Jaws and with Gitz, and it took you quite a long time to decide whether or not whether Sun should go against Iron Jaws or Gitz. But looking at this chart, it seems that it would have been a no-brainer to just pick Iron Jaws, because you know Skaven was going against Gitz. So what's your mindset on this?
I mean, I think probably the Skaven list on that battle plan probably would have 20-0'd the Gargants as well. So I was kind of just thinking about like between Gargants and Gitz versus our Gargants, which are both 3s, right? So I just was like, I'd be unsure about which of those 3s was slightly better. Sorry,
Oh,
Iron Jaws and
Iron
Gits, both
Jaws, yeah.
priests. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about because I knew that my army was going to be fine against both of them. So I was just worried about Iron Jaws and Gits because this Skaven army is kind of a really unbalanced army. So
Yeah,
basically, it's super slow. Like that is its main weakness, is it's super slow, but
yeah,
it's not slow once it gets into combat because the whole army, thanks to this like master clan rule, where when
yeah,
the first unit fights, the rest of the army gets to pile in. Basically, it gets to pile in 6 inches with the whole army once you get into combat. So it's super quick and super dynamic once you get into combat. But if you play versus a shooting army, it's so hard to get up the board. So you'll notice I got
yeah,
like Seraphon and Tzeentch. I guess Tzeentch is a magic army, but yeah, these kind of like long range armies. I have them as I guess an orange, so almost a red.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Whereas all the melee armies, so the Iron Jaws, Ogres, Gargants, and Gits are greens. Basically because I'm going to be honest that the Screaming Bell is just kind of a bit broken now. Um, basically, it just cannot die. Because so on paper it's basically it's 15 wounds with a 4-up save,
Right.
and a 5-up board. But it gets
Okay.
-1 to hit in combat from the Skaven rule, and then basically it can pass off wounds on a 3-up to
Okay.
like a clan rat unit near it,
Right.
and you can like kind of pick the unit so you can spread it out to multiple clan rat units, and then at the end of the battle shock phase, every clan rat unit gets D3 models back. So you basically have these. I call them like rechargeable batteries for the Screaming Bell. You kind of like stick these like stick
That's
these clan rats behind the bell, and
yeah.
basically the bell just takes damage
That
and just kills the clan rats, and then they come back. So the bells will just never die. You have to do some crazy amount of damage to actually have a chance to kill them.
that
Yeah.
is the most Skaven logic I've heard in a long time. But so, what made it different from before, though? So the buff was just that you don't need X number of models pushing it, right? But it's the same war scroll essentially, or did they change something?
Yes. So it is the same. It did go down 20 points, but yeah, I think it was pretty decent before, and I think this is just a case where like it got buffed, and I finally played with it and realized it was
Yeah,
good. But
yeah.
you did have one problem before. So the 3-up bodyguard pass off is compulsory. So that means that if you have clan rats near you and your opponent does enough damage, they have to die. And if they
Oh,
die, it means that you're not going to have any models to move the bell. So there was always a situation with the bell where if your opponent put enough damage into it, it would kill all your clan rats in your army. And then you'd have to do like some like 3D chess trying to figure out like I'm trying to get like 10 heroes in range to move the bell so I can get the other bell. Hopefully the other bell's in range and it can push this bell. Yeah, so that was always awkward. So now that yeah, that push into battle thing is gone. It's not such a big deal that it kills all the
yeah.
clan rats because they're kind of like cheap wounds. Um, yeah, and it other than that, it's great. Like its abilities sometimes are good, sometimes they're terrible. Like the random abilities. It actually does like kind of okay damage in combat because if you play a combat army, you will just fight with it the whole game, every combat phase because I'm literally when I play this, I'm just screening my army with the bells because they can never die. So if my opponent charges them, I just know they're going to be stuck into combat the whole game. And then what I'm using to do damage is these 2 units of 15 sensor bearers, which
Right.
do an absolute insane amount of damage that doesn't make
No,
sense at all.
yeah. The moment we saw that, we realized, oh man, we need to send the recursion guy against this, or else it'll literally shred anything. With like, hey, you're one bad prio roll or positioning choice away from getting completely blown away by those guys. Uh, okay, that's interesting. That's crazy. Was this your first time playing this particular list, or because this? I know that we had a bunch of list changes because we had to redo pairings. We had a battle scroll change. Was this your first time playing this concept?
No, so as I always do with this kind of army is I was like fairly certain it was going to get buffed in the battle scroll. So I
Sure.
was basically playing it a month before the battle scroll came out to like trying to figure out like um what units need to change to be good and like what kind of changes they need. And as soon as I saw that bell change, I was like, okay, this thing's just broken now, and like I'm going to take like 2 of these minimum
Oh
because
no.
the problem with Skaven has always been you don't have an anvil. That's always been the problem because you really need your clan rats to stay alive long enough so that they can do battle tactics for you, because you don't want to be sending in other stuff to do battle tactics.
Okay.
Yeah. So the stuff you really had some difficulty staying alive for long enough. That's always been the problem for Skaven. So as soon as they buff like a durable unit, I know that's going straight into the army, because that's always been the problem with them. Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually, because going into this edition, I was never scared of like the bell or anything, but this has given us a lot to think about. And yeah, Dennis, who plays Gargants, also plays Skaven. So we're actually looking forward to watching the VOD of the match just to see how everything works. And I think this was really interesting. Speaking of Dennis, like I think one of the bigger surprises from the armies of renown was just how ridiculous King Broad Stomp is. Um, Seeing as it went from a projected. Oh no, I think there's an inconsistency in the sheet now. I realize it. So it's not projected rating 3. It was projected rating 2, and it went to a 1. So
So the projected rating down to the bottom is also kind of like taking into account the battle plan. I tried to
oh
just like kind of
oh my bad.
average it
Okay.
out. So you
Yeah.
see the corn is like a 4 on pulse,
Okay.
which I
Okay.
think now that I've seen that game, maybe it's not, maybe it's a 3 on pulse. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, the Gargants. So I knew Gargants is not a great matchup for corn. Basically, the problem is that so with Gargants, you want to you really need to take a no half measures approach versus Gargants. Like if you charge something into combat with a Gargant, the
Yeah.
Gargant needs to die.
Yes.
You can't like do chip damage and then take a hit. Like you really just need to just kill the Gargant when you go into combat. And Khorne is all about like doing chip damage, kind of winning a slow kind of game by like
Yeah.
summoning, using blood path abilities and stuff like that. So Gargants is quite a bad matchup.
Right.
Yeah, Khorne always has this problem. I think Khorne as an army is it is in a good spot, but it's always struggled against armies that are just a little bit uninteractive. Because Khorne's core abilities are all about shutting down armies that need to like get into you to do something.
Right.
And so armies that don't actually need to get into you just don't really care. Like you can like walk up to a Gargant and murder lust onto it, and the Gargant's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna sit here and stand on this objective. I don't care if I'm tagged. I'll just hit you. It's fine. Like the Gargant just doesn't care, right? So you can have all this jank with Khorne, but Gargants always have that ability to just stand on an objective, claim it. And then now the problem with the new one, okay, is that the murder lust thing doesn't even work particularly well, because what happens is, and I think it happened in the game, is so you might like push up a unit to murder lust, but the Gargant player can always kind of like hide a Gargant behind terrain, and then like move up to the terrain, chuck the terrain away, and then charge. And there's not really a way for you to screen, because like the terrain was blocking you from screening, right? So the fact you can now pick up terrain, charge, and then make a 3d6 move makes it so hard to actually screen the Gargants now.
I agree.
Now they do actually have kind of a more dynamic way of playing the game with this King's Broad thing. So that was, I think, something that happened in the game that was really bad for the Khorne. The other thing that we were quite surprised by was actually the Man Crushers were really good in that matchup. So again, it's like the no half measures thing versus Gargants, and with the Man Crushers, it's especially the case that you really need to kill them, because if you don't, they are super annoying. Because they still count for heaps of objectives, and Gargants having units that can do battle tactics into the late game kind of covers the weakness of that army, which is usually run out of battle tactics. So in that game, Geordie, I think he killed one and then left 3 of them on like 2 wounds, but they just ran around doing battle tactics, and that lost him so many points in the end of the game.
Yeah. I also think that there was this one turn where he thought he was going to kill a Man Crusher. He went in, just rolled low, and then the Man Crusher lived, and that was very painful for him. I also think that Broad Stomp actually cleans up a lot of the problems with the battle tactic situation the Suns have, because they have a couple of really easy ones, right? Like there are a couple of ones where you just take an objective with XYZ combination of Gargants and you got it. So it feels like an auto W for these for for King's Broad Stomps at least. King Broad Stomp at least.
Yeah. I think that list is actually super good about tactics, because as you said, you've got those 2 new ones from the Battle Tome, and then you've got Surround and Destroy super easy with like 2 little guys on the side.
Yeah.
Intimidate's obviously super easy with Gargants because you're moving forward, and then
Yeah.
you can just do like Led into the Maelstrom, just charge 2 Gargants and get that. So yeah, I think that list is super good for sure.
Yeah, no, yeah. Dennis was really happy about that game. Um, but yeah, that was the other, like, not upset. That was something that we kind of, he initially went into that because this Corn army that Jordy used, it didn't seem to have a Scar brand. It didn't have like 10 Skull Reapers. It didn't have any obvious hammers. You guys, he had a lot of Wrathmongers though, and I remember reading on Twitter one time you talked about Wrathmonger tech or something like that. What can you explain, like, what that tech is, if that's okay? Like, unless you're like
Yeah.
brewing something.
So that list we actually took from a player called Freddie Leggett in the UK who took this to 5-0, and so we kind of
Wow.
wanted to just test the list and see how it would go. So the main strength of the list is, so it's in Gore-Tide and it has Korg's Cull, and so that means that you can have like a turn where you activate and you get an extra murder roll in all your units, and Wrathmongers can basically get that again from Scar, so they can be rolling 3 murder rolls when they die. And then another thing they can get is they do like mortal wounds when your opponent rolls a 1 to hit against them in combat. So they can do a lot of like mortals in return. And because Khorne is like accruing blood tithe as the game goes, doing damage when you die is super strong because, okay, well, you die and you get blood tithe, and then you can also do damage in the process and take your opponent's units out. So you end up in a situation where effectively like dying is winning you the game, if that makes sense.
No,
Now,
yeah, I get it. And then when
Yeah.
they're like weak, you can use the type to summon demons and stuff. So it's really good. I'm surprised there's no Unfettered Fury though, but that's just something that I'm just so used to Unfettered Fury being so important in Khorne list. Seeing Korg's Skull was really refreshing though. It was cool to see the guy. I know that it plays into the whole murder role thing, but it was cool and interesting. Huh. I wonder what. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I think on reflection, I think probably the change we would make is definitely having a unit of 10 Skull Reapers in there. Just because it had a unit of 10 Wrathmongers, and as a unit that does splash mortals back, it's super nice. But there's actually not that many matchups where that's gonna be great. I mean, I guess you guys, okay, so against the Iron Jaws,
yeah.
Ogre, and Gits, that would be decent. But against the other 3 armies, Gargan, Zinch, and Seraphon, it really wouldn't matter. Like Zinch, okay, some horrors are gonna get into combat with you or something,
That's
and
true.
you're gonna do, they're not going to kill you, so they're not going to do splashback mortals. And then Seraphon's probably not going to be in combat with you. And then Gargants, okay, so the problem with Gargants is, so first of all, they don't actually have to kill you to win the game, right? So because they can just stand on objectives. So that's the problem. So they don't have to kill you. And then the other problem is, well, with the Wrathmongers, you do mortals on 1s to hit, and Gargants just don't roll like any dice. So they only have like 10 attacks a model or something, right? So, okay, you're going to do like 1 or 2 mortals when they attack, which is just nothing, right? So, yeah.
No, it's actually kind of wild. Speaking of like non-interactive armies and armies that don't have to kill to win, I just realized looking at this matrix that there's not a single Grand Alliance Death faction represented, and I think it's weird because we just came from maybe a month ago. If we had been making a competitive gun to your head type of list, type of team, we'd probably have like OBR and Soul Blight in it, right? Why didn't you guys have any Grand Alliance Death guys? Dennis, it was initially going to play OBR, but with the changes, the point increases, like he shifted to Gargants because he was comfortable with that. But do you guys personally feel that Grand Alliance Death had such a huge kick to the gonads that it wouldn't be viable competitively in the near future?
I think it's viable.
Okay.
So first of all, we don't actually really have anyone that plays them. So that's
Oh,
kind of the problem. But I
oh,
mean,
okay.
we have some people who could learn them. But I'd say both of those armies now, because they've been nerfed, they're very unlikely to win games by a lot.
Right.
Because they don't actually do a lot of damage. So OBR, like the shift has kind of been towards taking like a big block of 30 more take with a harvester,
Right.
which just doesn't do a lot of damage. And now Soul Blight, because they nerfed a lot of stuff with Soul Blight, right? Like
Yeah.
almost everything went up. And
Mhm.
the end result of that is now it's just zombies because and Games Workshop has unfortunately made this mistake a couple of times.
Right.
I think it's happened with Gits as well, where the army's performing super well, so they nerf a whole bunch of units. But
Yeah.
actually, what that does is because a whole bunch of units have been nerfed, the internal balance of the army stays the same, or gets worse, but the kind of the external strength of the army gets lower. So Soul Blight. Okay, zombies have always been kind of above everything else since the book came out,
Sure.
and the whole kind of the whole rest of the army has gotten weaker in the context of the metagame. So zombies, okay, got nerfed a bit, but they were
Mhm.
always the strongest aspect of the army. So now they're the only kind of aspect that survived, and that zombies build, yeah, it's just not going to score a bunch of points. So actually, there was a tournament in London over the weekend where someone did go 5-0 with Soul Blight, but the scores were 12-8, 11-9, four
Oh.
times in a row. So he
So
scored a 12, 11, 11, 11, 11. so,
okay, okay.
you can really
So
see, yeah. So he won 5 games,
right,
but not by much, right? So
right.
that's kind of the role of that army now.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So okay, I guess it would be a good defender army question mark. But
Mm.
was that London tournament also using differentials?
Yes, I
Oh
think a
wow.
slightly
Okay.
different system. So I think 11 there wasn't a minor. So in Release the Beast 11-9 is a minor victory.
You're right.
But and theirs it was I think a 1 to 2 point victory. So basically he was winning every game by 1 or 2 points. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's pretty wild. No, because I actually think that using differentials for a non-team based event is kind of wild. I really like differentials for teams. I am not so crazy about it for individual tournaments because uh, it feels really bad if you just have like a few really bad matchups and win by a little bit, even though you played out of your freaking mind. I feel, but do you see? I know this is super off topic already, but do you see
Hmm.
more individual tournaments going to differentials rather than just raw VP points or something like that?
Yes, and I know this was like a massive debate. I think probably about a year and a half ago,
Right.
and several TOs switched to being a total differential. I think the way it worked on the weekend was that the wins were first. So if you got like 5-0, you would
Yeah.
be like guaranteed for a second or third, and then the
Right.
tiebreaker in between them would be differential. Um,
Oh.
which
Okay.
I think is right. Now, what I would say is I'm not necessarily a fan of the Swiss system, which I think kind of underpins this whole discussion of wins versus differential, because I personally think the differential can be better, but not in a Swiss situation, and the reason for that is, um, basically you can be in a situation where once you get to the last round, if two strong players play each other, they can both score really low, and so that means that you kind of get a disadvantage on the differential system
Yeah.
for getting to the last round on like you go to 4-0 and then you play the last round and you end up being 5-0, but you might actually be lower than someone who's 4-1 because you had
Yeah.
to play someone really strong in the last round, right? Because of the points
Correct.
thing. So that's the problem with the differential thing is the last round. So I don't think it quite works with Swiss. So if we're going to continue doing Swiss, I definitely think it needs to be the wins based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The traditional one. Yeah. I feel like I can't imagine something more of a bummer for me than going 5-0 and then like losing the tournament, not getting first in the tournament. It's just there's just a weird disconnect in my head for that. But I get why differentials works in some metas or some circumstances. But okay, thank you for answering that. So yeah, overall, I think we had a lot of fun with the exhibition match, and again, thank you so much for like to you and the team for taking the time out to give us a taste of what Worlds is like. I know the final score is like 73 in favor of Australia, 47 in favor of Team Wartilyo, not Team Philippines, Team Wartilyo. Like because but we had a lot of fun. We learned a lot, and some of the guys are already talking about doing stuff, are already wanting to do more of these, even if it's not against Team Australia, just so we can try the team environment more. Sorry, just to clarify for YouTube, the reason it's Team Wartilyo and not Team Philippines, and I think I mentioned this in another video, is this is just our gaming club wanting to try this out. It wouldn't be proper to call it Team Philippines if we hadn't opened this up to everyone to let them try out for a slot in this. Maybe if we ever get a Worlds team going, we'd love to call it that. But yeah. So yeah, thank you, Stuart, and thank you to the rest of the team. I have a few more questions to follow to end the discussion. But yeah, do you have any do you have any feedback on this
Yeah.
format? Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just like to thank you as well for the exhibition. So we're quite a new team. So we actually signed these 6 players, I think a month ago now. So we're very, very fresh, and so this is really good for us to kind of get an idea of where we're at and like what we need to improve on and stuff. So yeah, it was super great to play this scrim. Yeah, and definitely if you guys are down, we'd 100% do it again in the future. Yeah.
All right, that's fantastic. So Worlds, it's like kind of hard not to talk about Worlds, right? And we're already hyped for you guys to go to Amsterdam because we kind of know you guys a little bit and we played with you guys. I think we as a team, we're basically rooting for you guys to do really well. So Karn, Straya, and all that. But because of Worlds being in Amsterdam, do you think that it kind of makes it so it's kind of, sorry, in my opinion at least, it's a bit on the pricier side. Do you think that that's going to be like your quota for traveling out of the country to play for the year? Like you personally, because I don't know if you can speak for the rest of the team.
For me personally, yeah, I think
Yeah.
maybe the more kind of endowed members of the team can maybe afford another trip, but for me, yeah, I was probably going to travel to CanCon in January to play, which is the big Australian event. It's the biggest one we have. I was
Yeah.
probably going to, and that's a golden ticket event as well. I
Ooh.
probably would like to play in that, but yeah, for me, the Amsterdam trip is like expensive, and it gets more expensive every year with this inflation situation. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
it's definitely expensive for sure.
did you mention that the CanCon thing would be a golden ticket event in this coming January?
Yeah, I think this January's one is a golden ticket event. Yeah, yeah.
Wait, but if Worlds is in November, how can there be a golden ticket event in January?
I believe it would be for the following one. I think this year's one was as well, but yeah, I think it's for the following one, perhaps. I'm
Okay,
not
so
100% sure. Yeah.
that's really interesting because we actually ran our own golden ticket event this year, and so securing that slot for next year is already a possibility. That's really interesting. Okay, yeah, I should
I
probably
think. Could be wrong. I think.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm pretty
So
sure.
yeah, so this year, this November, we're actually sending Carlos Zamora or Zammy, the DOT player. He's going to be our golden ticket representative in November. Do you know if anyone in your team is going to be going to Worlds? I'm just curious, not trying to like one up or eight. I'm just wondering.
I don't think so. No,
Not quite yet.
not that I know of. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, that's fair. Okay, so yeah, this was also a very good like test for him to play against players who are abroad because I know that you guys have had a lot more time with this game and a lot more practice playing against like a wider field. So this was very good for us too in that sense. So, okay, I guess I got 2 more questions. One quick question and one that's a bit more open ended. The quick question is this: if you were to travel abroad to join a tournament, how many months in advance in general do you think it would be good for that tournament to like open up signups for other people from your experience, just because we kind of don't have experience traveling abroad for tournaments yet?
Yeah, so it kind of depends how far it is.
Sure.
So I think yeah, just with with the airline situation and stuff, if it's further, then you kind of have to book earlier.
Earlier. Right.
Yeah, so I think probably I'd say if it's like a Europe America trip from Australia, it probably would have to be a year before
Right.
for people to plan for it. If it's somewhere in Asia,
Hmm.
I think in general like 6 months is fine. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, from here to like Japan to like Philippines, for example, could even be 3 months. But probably Australia to Philippines or something like that, it would be 6 months. I think would be the right
Six
kind of time
months.
frame.
Okay, that's fair and interesting. Okay, thank you. That's noted. Winking at the camera. But okay, and the last question I have is: if you were to do this format again, this kind of exhibition match format, would you change anything in particular? like general tips for the future, I guess, because this is our first time like organizing something like this.
It might be fun to do all the games at the same time. I know we're
Ooh.
recording it, and that makes it difficult, but I think to kind of give more of the real vibe of playing like all the teams games at the same time, I think it's actually super fun to play them all at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that could be something we do next time. It's hard to work out because obviously people have schedules and stuff, but
Yeah.
in my head, that would be the most like ideal kind of practice for us. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gives you that extra psychological pressure, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and stuff like, the coaches going between the tables to tell people how other people's games are going and calling timeouts with the coaches and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Noted. I think there is definitely a logistical issue for that, especially since our country's internet situation is notoriously bad. Or at least to us, at least I know that Australians tend to come. When I played against Marty and the others, I think people complain about Australia's internet situation too. And I remember we had internet issues when we played one time in one of those tournaments. And you're in Japan, where I assume the internet's like fantastic.
My internet is good now, but
Oh,
I
okay.
lived in like 3 or 4 places, and this is the only place that's been good. So
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know about
Okay.
Japan, but it's supposed to be good. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's super fair. All right. I think those are all the topics I wanted to cover, all the questions I wanted to ask. Before we head out, do you have any other questions or comments or concerns that you want to like let out, I guess?
No, not particularly. Yeah, I'd just like to
Okay.
thank you again for letting us to do this exhibition and also like doing the content side of things because I think it's actually really super cool that people get to see like, you know, us playing and my team kind of playing in the early stages. Yeah, I'd be
All
super keen for people to see it.
All
Yeah.
right, fantastic. Once again, thank you so much, Stuart. Thank you so much to Team Australia. You guys know who you are. And if you're watching this from outside the country, we are going to be having a GT maybe in the first or second quarter of next year. And we invite anyone who wants to take us on to, take a trip here and give it a shot. Because I think that relative to the rest of the world, Asia is relatively closed off in terms of Age of Sigmar, and it might be our last chance because prominent rumor is that this coming summer, fourth edition is coming. Don't hold me to that, but this is the prominent rumor. So yeah, thank you so much again, everyone, for tuning in. Especially if you watched all 6 of the rounds, and if you've enjoyed this kind of content, as always, leave a like, subscribe, and give us your feedback down below. If you want to follow Stuart and the rest of Team Australia, get more of their insights. As you can tell, they're a lot more experienced in this field than we are at the moment. We would have posted all of their socials and YouTube channel links in the description below. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic week. Bye. Okay, I think that should be good. Stuart, thank you so much again to you and the team. I know I just said that, but yeah, like off script. Thank you. I think we can close it off for now.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cheers. All right, thank you. I'm gonna let you go now. You take care. All right. Let's have more games in the future. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. See you later.
Cheers. Yeah.
Bye.